This video will contain spoilers for Jujutsu Kaisen chapters 83, 84, part of 85, 86, 87, and part of 88, and Season 2, Episode 8, otherwise known as Episode 32. So the second season of Jujutsu Kaisen is heating up, and in this series I'm going to be analyzing the story of the series as it airs and, as a manga reader, comparing the anime to the manga to see what they pulled over directly, what they modified or expanded, and what they just straight up removed. So let's begin with the 8th episode of Season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen. First, I'll recap the plot and explain what chapters it covered. For this episode, the anime seems to be restructuring the series of events from how the manga had them, almost certainly to rearrange the way the tension rises so as to make things feel more intense as they build up. This episode wraps up Chapter 83, which the first half of was used to close out last week's episode. After that, it cuts to the end of Chapter 85 and follows that through Chapter 86 to the end of Chapter 87, tosses in a couple pages from Chapter 88, then cuts back to Chapter 84, which closes out the episode at the end of that chapter. So with the structure cleared up, let's get into the recap. The episode begins with Gojo descending into the basement of the Hikarie building, witnessing all the civilians packed in like sardines. He notes that another curtain, centered below ground where he is trapping civilians like the one above ground. He makes his way to the atrium of the building where he can see down through each floor and float down to the bottom floor where the train line is. He says he gets what they're doing and accepts their challenge. We cut to the Aoyama Cemetery, which is a big old cemetery just a little ways northeast of the Scramble Crossing in Shibuya, 7 minutes after Gojo's arrival. Yuji is hanging out with Mei Mei and her little brother Wee Wee, who it seems she has a borderline Roll Tide type of relationship with. An interesting choice, grounded in a culture that I'm not a part of, and so I don't really connect with or understand. Anyway, Yuji expresses discontent at the idea that Gojo's being sent in alone and asks why they aren't being used as backup. Mei Mei confirms they are, and that's why they're going to Shibuya. Wee Wee expresses his own discontent towards Gojo having them act as backup, illustrating he views his sister as above anyone else, even Gojo. She tells him that you can't think of Gojo as a normal guy, and they get weird about it, which at least Yuji seems somewhat put off by. Mei Mei receives a call and tells Yuji that they're heading to Meiji Jingumae Station, a subway station a little ways northeast of the Scramble Crossing and northwest of the cemetery on the southeast corner of Yoyogi Park, since another curtain like the one that fell on Shibuya has appeared there. We cut back to Hikarie, where Jogo responds to the arrival of Gojo. 9 minutes after his arrival in Shibuya, he lands on the train tracks and responds with excitement to the enemy standing before him. They engage in a little back and forth trash talk. We cut away to Meiji Jingumae Station, near Exit 2, 11 minutes after Gojo encounters the disaster curses, where an assistant supervisor explains the situation to Yuji, Mei, and Wee Wee. There's a curtain around the station keeping civilians in, and then another curtain around the train platform keeping sorcerers out. They've deduced that the person who cast the curtains is between them, not on the platform in the center of both of them, and is taking the risk of leaving the curtains unattended. She hesitates for a moment, but Mei encourages her to continue, and she says that what appear to be transfigured humans were between the curtains. Yuji reacts to this, knowing it means his mortal enemy Mahito is involved. We cut to the three sorcerers standing at the top of the stairs leading into the station. Mei Mei is using her crows to surveil the area ahead of time and scope out where any enemies might be lying in wait. Yuji is raring to go, but Wee Wee admonishes him for distracting his sister since the technique takes focus. She says it's actually fine, but as she does so, one of her crows is taken out. Having gotten the gist of the situation, she asks Yuji if he'd rather kill a bunch of transfigured humans or one strong cursed spirit. She figures he'd prefer the latter and explains that the transfigured humans are wandering around killing civilians on the 4th basement floor, while the train platform is on the 5th basement floor where they can't get to. She assumes most of the civilians are down there, but her crows can't get past the curtain there since they're imbued with cursed energy. She says her crows were taken out between the 1st and 2nd basement floors, so that would be where the cursed spirit is. Yuji asks if Mahito's the one down there. Mei says she wasn't able to confirm if Mahito was there or not, but there's transfigured humans around, so he's definitely around somewhere. She says she had her misgivings about splitting up, but they have to, or all the civilians on B4F will be killed before they get there. Mei and Wee Wee will go to exit 7 and head straight to B4F to kill the transfigured humans and save the civilians, while Yuji goes down to B2F and fights the cursed spirit there. As Yuji enters B2F of Meiji Jingumae Station, 23 minutes after Gojo encounters the disaster curses, he comes across the cursed spirit in question. A giant grasshopper chowing down on a corpse that turns to look at him. This grasshopper is very concerned with whether he's smart or not and is constantly trying to figure out if he's smarter than Yuji. Yuji asks whether Mahito is present or not, and the grasshopper confirms that he is, simultaneously reminding Yuji of his name since he'd only ever heard Junpei, rest in peace, say it the one time. Yuji surveys the room and remembers that Gojo told him that even strong sorcerers can have trouble with barrier techniques. With that in mind, he comes to the conclusion that it's unlikely for the grasshopper to be the one who cast the curtain, also taking into account that he specifically said he was protecting it. As he scans the room, he notices a nail covered in ofuda, a type of paper talisman common in Japan used for religious purposes in Shintoism. This nail, like the one Geto had last episode, is a medium for a commissioned curtain, allowing a sorcerer to cast a curtain with pre-configured properties that will stay present as long as the nail is kept intact. Yuji decides breaking that nail is his goal. Yuji gives the grasshopper a decent kick to the face, and they engage in battle. The narration here refers to the grasshopper as being born from people cursing locust plagues. So here's a little entomology lesson. Grasshoppers and locusts are actually the same species. The only difference is that grasshoppers have this social gene that causes a transformation in them if they happen to be around enough other grasshoppers. And this is when they become locusts and have the potential to become a dangerous swarm or plague. Effectively, grasshoppers stay grasshoppers if they're solitary, but if they find themselves in a big enough social group when they're young, they'll mature into locusts instead. Anyway, suffice it to say, Yuji ends up being the smarter one and defeats the grasshopper despite his one trick. Having destroyed the commissioned curtain, Yuji, Mei, and Wee Wee regroup and head down to the train platform, only to find a catatonic woman. We cut back to Gojo. Above him, the opening of the atrium he entered through is covered with tree roots, as well as the exit staircase on the platform, courtesy of Hanami. He tells them not to bother, as he doesn't intend to run away, as he assumes they plan to kill all the civilians if he flees, and that's why he's even there to begin with. As the civilians debate whether they just see Gojo and Choso talking to each other, or all of them, including Hanami and Jogo, the ones who can see the two cursed spirits, as well as the woman last episode who could see the curtain while her friend couldn't, must be either naturally a little more in tune with cursed energy, or maybe had a brush up with a cursed spirit, like how Yuji could see Megumi Shikigami in episode 1 even before he ate Sukuna's finger. Jogo reminds Gojo they're just really evil by informing him they plan to kill all the civilians either way, whether he's there or not. In the manga, the flashback of Geto explaining the plan to Jogo is just in one spot, but for the anime they wove it throughout this portion of the episode, so I'll just recap it all at once at the point the manga had it. The platform gates open and people begin falling onto the train tracks around Gojo, and while he tries to get them out of the way, he also realizes that they covered the exits with tree roots so he couldn't see if civilians were on the other side, so he'd avoid blindly busting through them and potentially hurting anyone on the other side. The curses start killing people at random as they approach Gojo, and Choso assists from range using blood manipulation. Yes, he has the same technique as Noritoshi from the Kyoto school, as he was a cursed wound death painting that was born from the old Noritoshi Kamo back in the Meiji era, that lasted from 1868 to 1912. So he and the modern Kyoto Noritoshi share an ancestor. Jogo and Hanami go in for some CQC, which seems ill-advised against Gojo's infinity, but they both activate domain amplification and break through his infinity. Gojo teleports out of there and lands atop one of the platform gates. He assesses their plan, assuming they learned about domain amplification from the curse user they're working with, who he doesn't know is Geto. His analysis of domain amplification is that it's like coding yourself in your domain rather than conjuring a barrier and projecting your domain onto its interior, which is what happens during a domain expansion. It doesn't have the same sure hit effect as a domain expansion, but like simple domain, it has the ability to neutralize techniques on contact. In other words, it can go through infinity and make him vulnerable to their attacks. We see a flashback as Geto explains to Jogo that the best strategy against Gojo is to crowd him with civilians who will get in his way, limiting his ability to use either blue or red for fear of hurting them, and that he'll avoid using his domain expansion as well because the barrier would crush civilians between it and the curtain. He also tells them they can't use their own domain expansions either, since they'd catch civilians in them and put Gojo in a position where his hand would be forced to use his own, and he would of course win a domain battle. Geto tells them their goal is to stall Gojo and keep his focus for 20 minutes, after which he would end it with something he refers to as Prison Realm. Jogo reminds Gojo that they said not to run away, even though they didn't, and kills a bystander to punish him for it and entice him to keep the battle going. As Jogo turns the man to ash, Gojo seems to get angry, removes his blindfold, and retorts that he's surprised Jogo thought he could win with his sorry excuse for a brain. With the recap out of the way, let's go over the basic points of the plot. 1. Gojo confronts Jogo, Hanami, and Choso under the Shibuya Hikarie building. 2. They intend to use the civilians against him, similar to the way Toji used Flyheads as chaff against him, and go all invincible on them. 3. Though they try to use domain amplification against him, Gojo still seems to be confident he can take them. 4. Yuji, Meimei, and her little brother Wee Wee are sent to Meiji Jingomae Station to address a new curtain that was cast there. 5. They confirm the presence of transfigured humans, and therefore Mahito's involvement. 6. Meimei and Wee Wee split up with Yuji to try and save as many civilians as possible, while Yuji descends into the station to confront a gross grasshopper thing. 7. Yuji defeats the gross grasshopper thing and removes the curtain. They descend to the train platform, only to find a catatonic woman. Now, let's get into some analysis. I just wanted to reiterate a few of the details I pointed out during the recap and give them some extra room to breathe. First, we're shown here again that some non-sorcerers have the ability to see some of the goings-on surrounding curses and cursed energy, as we saw the woman last episode who saw the curtain coming down around Shibuya, and the people on the platform this episode who could see Jogo and Hanami, not just Gojo and Choso, who actually have physical bodies. We were first introduced to this concept at the beginning of the series in episode 1, when Yuji could see Megami's Shikigami even before he ate Sukuna's finger. Next, the fact that Choso has the same curse technique as Noritoshi Kamo. So this one is a little confusing just because the use of the same name twice. So there were 3 cursed wound death paintings that were incarnated last season: Eso, Kechizu, and Choso. In the last episode of season 1, Yuji and Nobara killed Eso and Kechizu, so the last one standing is now Choso. The thing is, these death paintings were a byproduct of some fucked up experiments performed by a man named Noritoshi Kamo, who lived in the Meiji era of Japan, which lasted from 1868 to 1912. So like 150 years ago roughly, this guy created these death paintings, and because they came into existence effectively as his children, they had the ability to inherit a curse technique from the Kamo clan, which is why Choso has the same blood manipulation we saw the modern-day Noritoshi Kamo use. The confusing thing regarding the names is that the modern-day Noritoshi has that name because he was a bastard child who was looked down on due to the circumstances of his birth, and so he was named after a disgraced ancestor of the clan who did fucked up experiments. It wasn't until later, when the clan found out that he had inherited their most prized technique, that they changed their tune and decided to set him up to become the next head of the clan. Stuff like that is part of the reason why Gojo hates the higher-ups and big clans of Jujutsu society. How hypocritical they are and how they prize things like the sanctity of bloodlines and the inheritance of their prized techniques instead of the decency and character of the people in question. Lastly, I'll just explain domain amplification, because the translation of its English name is a little misleading. The Japanese kanji used for the word amplification is tenyin, or tenen, which can more literally be translated as envelopment. but for whatever reason, the official translators went with amplification instead. This can be kind of misleading and make you think the technique is somehow amplifying something through the use of their domain, but it's literally just wrapping themselves in their domain like an aura, or a domain full cowling, if you will. It seems to be less effective than simple domain, however, as Gojo seemed to be able to counter it once you knew it was coming. It's possible it depends on the user and their strength as well. Maybe there's some reason that it just doesn't work that well against someone as strong as Gojo. We're not given a very explicit explanation on it, so I wouldn't sweat it too much. It stops making sense if you think too hard about it. Next, as promised, it's time for the return of Jujutsu Stroll. Today we'll be taking a look at the locations introduced in the last episode and this episode. First, there's this bridge that Nanami, Ijichi, Ino, and Megami are talking on. In this little clip I recorded on Google Earth, you can see me circle the scramble crossing with my mouse. That'll be like our central area I'll always relate everything to in order to give you an idea of where everything is. This bridge is down the street from the scramble crossing near the Metro Plaza Shopping Mall and Miyashita Park. This angle with the street sign visible is actually looking down the street from the opposite direction of the scramble crossing, which is why when the angle flips while they're talking you can see the curtain in the background. Next, we have this art installation near Shibuya Mark City that Naobito, Maki, Nobara, and Akari are talking inside of. It's the closest landmark to the scramble crossing we see any of the groups at, which is why Nobara mentioned it by name. It's just on the other side of the buildings from the scramble crossing. The last one for last episode is this shot from across the street outside the Hotel Metz. Kusakabe and Panda are walking around here and stop to talk. You can see the building off to the right with the unique design, the signs behind them, and the stairs and escalators as well. This spot is just a ways south and a little east of the scramble crossing. Now we'll get into the areas for this episode. First up, the Shibuya Hikarie building. It's right next to the scramble crossing, and its basement floors connect all around to the different buildings here as part of Shibuya Station. I wasn't going to go hunt down the exact area underground where they're fighting, but you can find videos if you really want to see it if you look for the Fukutoshin Line platform, or honestly, just a Shibuya Station walkthrough video. Next, we have the Aoyama Cemetery. This is probably the area furthest away from the scramble crossing we've seen so far, a pretty good distance east as I mentioned in the recap. It's a pretty big cemetery too, so I wasn't able to hunt down exactly where Yuji and them are standing since Google Earth doesn't work that way. Finally, we have the Meiji Jingomai station that the three head to, which is right on the southeast corner of Yoyogi Park, like I mentioned earlier. Exit 2 is right at the exit to Harajuku Station, which was also seen back in Season 1. This is where they go to talk to the assistant supervisor. Exit 3 is across the street, and this is where we see the three standing when Mei is using her crows, and where Yuji enters to fight the gross grasshopper thing. Here's where it is in relation to the scramble crossing. Finally, here's Exit 7, where Mei and Wee Wee head to while Yuji descends Exit 2. I'd point out where it is in relation to Exits 2 and 3, and then where it is in relation to the Scramble Crossing. There will be more in the coming episodes. Finally, let's touch on the in-between pages from the volume release of the manga. At the end of chapter 83, we get another explanation page regarding Jujutsu techniques. It explains that Divergent Fist and Black Flash aren't techniques per se, but just results from cursed energy reinforcement. Regarding Reverse Curse technique, it doesn't say anything I haven't already explained, but Akutami adds a funny little self-deprecating remark. After chapter 87, Akutami gave us a little page regarding the source material he pulled from regarding the Grasshopper Curse. And that's my episode recap and story analysis for the 8th episode of the 2nd season of Jujutsu Kaisen. Make sure to subscribe and turn on bell notifications if you want to be here as soon as possible each week as I put out new videos for each episode as it airs, and feel free to drop a comment with suggestions as to other videos you might like to see, such as character analysis videos or explanations. Thanks for watching.